Hey everybody, it's Alderwoman Maria Hadden. We're gonna get started in a couple minutes. I just wanted to get live here so we could share the stream.
It's like, don't leave.
All right. So I know we've got a few folks turning in. Hey Maureen, I'm just getting things shared on the social sites, and we'll get started right at 6:30. All right. So good evening, everybody. Got the link shared. Know folks will be tuning in. So it's Alderwoman Maria Hadden here, broadcasting live for our community town hall from my apartment. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for folks for being flexible. I know we had this originally scheduled for and needed to reschedule it because the mayor announced her public address to the city. So thank you for everybody who's able to tune in this evening. But, want to start off again by thanking folks for everything that all your words of appreciation, people checking in with me and the team, people sending us your questions, your concerns, your time, and people trying to check in and help our neighbors, help me, help our team, and also help our city through this really difficult time as we're living in a health pandemic and also grappling with a lot of pain because of the murder of George Floyd and many other Black people at the hands of state violence. We've got a lot of protests, we've got demonstrations, riots happening for a variety of reasons. I know for myself and for many others that this is not just about the murder of George Floyd, but about decades of systemic oppression, racism, violence against Black people. And we're at another one of these points where enough is enough. So I appreciate all of you who are trying to hold space and make space for your neighbors, yourself, your family members, friends, coworkers, colleagues, and people you don't even know in the city of Chicago as people process through their pain, through the collective trauma of what we're all grappling with, not just here in Chicago, but across the country. So thank you all for that. Apologize for dog barks, other random sounds that you might hear at our broadcast this evening, as I am still going from home. Couple of things that I want to lead off with as far as updates. So one, today, June 3rd, is the day that the mayor has moved us into phase 3, which is a cautious reopening phase. I'm gonna put a link here in the box. If you are not sure about what's happening, what the reopening means, what our phase means, I encourage you to check up on some information here. So I've got 2 links. One is chicago.gov/reopening. This is the main portal where you can find guides for businesses, for organizations, for employees on the public health guidance of what, as a business or an organization, you should be doing to safely, cautiously reopen. It's everything from restaurants, outdoor seating, how much space you need between your tables, the maximum number of people that can sit at a table, what types of safety precautions you must take for your staff, for other customers, for office spaces, daycare centers, transit riders. There are a lot of guidelines, information, and graphics there. For employees, if your employer is contacting you, talking to you about returning to work, some of them might be working on phase 3, some of them might be preparing for phase 4. There are also resources for you, making sure you know what to expect, what your rights are, things that you can ask about, and what your employer is supposed to provide. And lastly, this is very important information for consumers. So if you're someone that's looking at trying to support our local businesses by dining out, I want you to know what you should expect. This is a steep learning curve. It's a lot of new information and a time of change in living in the pandemic, and not everybody's going to get it right away. So I'd encourage you to read these guidelines, know what to expect, maybe even consider calling in advance, right? If you plan on patronizing a business, to kind of check and see what they're doing. And one of the ways you can do that is there's an emblem that says Chicago Safe. It's a yellow emblem. I'll post a photo of it on my site, but you can see it at the chicago.gov reopening page. So you might see our local businesses or organizations that have this printed out in the windows, or they might add this to their digital sites. And this means that they've self-certified, they've read the guidelines, and they've gone through a survey that the city has put together to let you know as a consumer that they know what they're supposed to do and they've agreed to do it. And so you can know, if you see this yellow badge in the windows of businesses in our area, that they've read the guidelines and that they're following them and that they're doing what they need to do in order to create a safe space for you. So chicago.gov/reopening. And then for continuing public health updates, we've got chicago.gov/coronavirus. Many of you know that both at the state level and the city level, we're doing a lot of measurements. So we're still tracking how much testing we're doing, but also test like positivity rates. So how many positive COVID cases do we have, like as compared to the number of tests that we're doing? We're tracking mortality rates, of course. We're tracking things like what our hospital capacities are for ventilators and ICU beds. And all of this information is being coordinated with the state and the city. Hello, Lisa. And hello, Michael. And it's in this public dashboard. So the Department of Public Health is continually adding more data to this that's publicly accessible. So you can see in kind of an easy form where we're at, and then compare that to the metrics that have been set by the state and the city to give you a gauge of how well we're doing on these metrics for reopening. So right now, We've seen steady declines in the number of positive cases, steady declines in our mortalities, and folks are optimistic. And also, some of you may have read a Tribune article that came out yesterday that I shared, where I'll be very frank with you guys, I'm still a little uncomfortable with the reopening happening today, given the large scale demonstrations, protests, and just thousands of people that have been congregating and gathering over these last few days. Between that, Memorial Day weekend, the early opening of other states in advance of us, we are waiting and seeing. And our public health commissioner, Dr. Arwady, is paying close attention to our numbers to watch out for any indication that we might see a spike in COVID cases. So one of the most important things that I want you all to take away from today's town hall is, if you have participated in any demonstrations over the last couple of days, protests, anything where you've been exposed to a large group of people, I would encourage you to self-quarantine, isolate for that 14-day period, and pay attention to your signs. Remember that COVID-19, you can be carrying the coronavirus and not have symptoms, so you can be asymptomatic. Remember that it can take 2 weeks or even longer for symptoms to manifest. And even though you might have been wearing a mask, remember that short of those N95 masks, a lot of the fabric masks, the small surgical masks that we use, those are great to help reduce and protect others and reduce some of the spread, but they are not keeping the virus from spreading. So if you've been in large contact, large groups of people, please pay attention to your symptoms. Check out the chicago.gov coronavirus website and be mindful of that. Think about the family, friends, folks that you're living with, and people that you're coming in contact with, especially as people are being asked to go back to work. So I know there's not a ton that you may be able to do to prevent that now, but I think it's important that people have a mind and a concern for it. Hi, David. I'll get to those questions in a second. I just want to get through a couple more updates. And if other folks have questions and comments to add, please go ahead and add it to the chat box. And I'm going to do my best to address people's concerns and questions through our town hall tonight. So thanks for joining. Thanks for the smiley face, David. So things that we've been working on out of our office, it's been a lot. It's hard to say, it's hard to summarize. Since last week, all these days are running together. There's been a lot of emergency response. We've done a lot of outreach to our community orgs, to our small businesses, to you all. And there's been a lot of briefings as a city as we hear about what's been done for public safety and also what kind of recovery stuff. So I guess I'll try and sum up things in a linear fashion, and then we can start digging into some of the questions and the what's next. One, I want to start off with a positive piece of news, a couple positive pieces of news. So tomorrow we have a Health and Human Relations Committee meeting. I've been working really closely with Jane Addams Senior Caucus for a couple of months now on an ordinance that would increase housing protections for seniors during public health emergencies. There was a great ProPublica article out the other day. You guys may have seen some coverage in other media spaces, really talking about how some of our most vulnerable residents, seniors living in senior housing, have really struggled through the pandemic, and how we as a city need to do more to provide protections, to enforce better practices for building owners and building management companies for senior buildings. We're really close to finalizing some language. We were hoping to be able to pass this through committee tomorrow, but we're working out a few details. So I'll speak to it a bit in committee tomorrow. We're going to have a leader from Jane Addams Senior Caucus speak to this as well. And we're going to continue working on this through next week and see if we can't get it ready for council in time for this month. Another update on legislation that we've been working on. Many of you may remember working with the Black Remembrance Project. Our office put forth an ordinance that would make Juneteenth a city holiday. Due to a lot of complications with figuring out the HR components and the financial pieces, making it a city holiday that would be paid is taking longer and has had to be put on hold because of the pandemic. And also, City Council is going to be on June 17th, right in advance of Juneteenth. And what we are moving forward with is a resolution that we're working on with the language that we came up with Black Remembrance Project in our ordinance. We'll be using that language and recognizing Juneteenth with the Chicago Aldermanic Black Caucus and Mayor Lightfoot as well. And I'll definitely, if you tune into City Council on the 17th, I'll have some words to share on how we reflect on Juneteenth in this moment as a city and as a country. So I'm excited that we'll be able to recognize that in City Council coming up. And then last but not least, in the good news category, I'll say that we've had some fantastic community organizers doing outreach with a lot of our young folks in the neighborhood. Marilyn Pagan Banks with A Just Harvest, we have Ralph Edwards and his team from One North Side, James and Natalie Crockett with C24/7 Ministries, who have been just in constant relationship building, talking to young people in our neighborhood with even more people out of work, with less access to jobs and to services. Tensions are high, and folks in our community who have not a lot of access to goods and services, it's even harder for us to meet these needs and harder for people to get by. And these community organizers, these organizations in our neighborhood have been maintaining relationships, helping to bring information to me in my office, helping to make me a better representative, and also really having the conversations that we need to have with folks through this crisis, through this uprising, and through the pandemic to make sure that we're sticking together as a community. So we would not be as strong a neighborhood, a community, or a ward without our community partners. So I just want to say a special thank you to everyone there. And so moving forward, there are a lot of questions, concerns, and things lingering. So let's dive into some of the questions and concerns. We can talk about police accountability. We can talk about what we're doing for housing relief. What are we doing with our CARES funds? How we're supporting our child care centers. We've got a lot of questions that I don't have full answers to. And then what we're doing with the reopening. And I know many of you have written about what's happened with the protests, feelings you have about how the mayor has handled those protests. So we'll start at the top there. So David says, speaking of injustices beyond police violence that impact marginalized the hardest, the mayor has ignored the homeless through this pandemic. She's turned away from the Bring Chicago Home rent tax. And then what's the plan from City Council to change this policy starting from this reopening? David, that's a really good question. And we haven't been able to get some solid answers to that. Right now, I did have another conversation with our budget director, Susie Park, today, and we're hoping to see in the next couple of days some kind of final drafts of how we're using our CDBG funds. So I am on Alderwoman Dowell's budget and contract oversight working group. So we have been meeting weekly with the budget director and other department heads that we need to hear from, on there with several other progressive aldermen, including Alderman Laspada, Alderman Sigcho Lopez, several folks. And we've had several questions about how we're working on housing issues, supporting people experiencing homelessness. I brought up some new questions around what we're doing with childcare centers, especially we had some big cuts from DFSS in funding for childcare centers in our neighborhood in particular. And on top of those cuts, where bridge funding that the mayor at one time for public safety concerns and the increased costs for appropriate public health equipment. We've got a lot of things that we should be funding that I haven't seen definite plans for yet. So that's definitely on my table and on like kind of on my plate and in the minds of other people. And we're supposed to be seeing some plans soon on what we're doing around housing in this pandemic and how we're kind of distributing some of those funds. I want to, let's see. Next question is around any update on when the lakefront path might open. It would be helpful a lot with mental health. I'm a runner and sidewalk running is difficult and sometimes dangerous. Thanks, James. I want to say that, yeah, so my wife is a runner and goes out too. And so I've definitely heard that it's difficult doing the sidewalk running. She has to go out pretty early in the morning so that she's not crowding people on the sidewalks. And we all know we live in a very dense area. So recently, as part of phase 3, the parks along the lake, but that were west of Lakeshore Drive have kind of been reopened. The lakefront is still closed. I'll say that like 3 times. The lakefront is still closed. The lakefront is still closed. And also, Park District employees, some of their staff are back to work this week, and they've been doing a lot of training over the last month. They're working on building up more training and protocols over this next month so that they can have appropriate staffing and appropriate, I think they're talking about kind of ambassadors to help people continue to practice social distancing while being able to open up that space again. So I don't have a date for you. I know that they're working hard, and I will say first and foremost, it's the numbers that kind of guide what we're doing there. And so stay tuned. I'm hopeful because we've had kind of this gradual reopening of the park space, and because the Park District is working on it, that we'll see something soon. David asked what you could help with on the senior bill. I'll say our key sticking point right now is the seniors really want to make sure that building managers and owners do wellness calls. So we're talking about, on a daily basis for residents who want, so residents would be able to opt out of this, but on a daily basis, just a phone call, a phone call to make sure that someone has what they need, that they know what's going on, they know how to contact medical assistance or get in touch with any other of the community programs that are available. And that's what the seniors say that they need loud and clear. And they're asking for the city to find a way to enforce that. And that's been one of our sticking points. So it's not a hard no, it's a figuring out what the right language is where we can legally actually put that in our city code. So some of our next steps, we're going to have the lawyers sit down together and do lawyer stuff, figure out some of that language. And so I'll let you guys know if there's any specific asks where resident action could be helpful. But right now we're in a really good space and working together. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to come to an agreement on this. A plan for alternatives to cooling centers. DFSS, parks, libraries, the city, they are actively working on the cooling center plan. I know that we had a hot day yesterday. This is very present on my mind. We deal with heat issues and the need for cooling centers under normal circumstances. And this is, in some cases, why the cautious reopening phase has been pretty important, because we need to move forward and try this out, even with our reservations, because we're going to have to figure out how to provide and open up some of our public spaces, maybe even working on private spaces with community partners, organizations, and companies to make sure that if we have the extreme heat that we normally get in the summer, that our residents have a safe place to cool down. It's going to be, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be very challenging. A lot of our resources as a city are stretched thin. A lot of our nonprofit partners are stretched thin already with everything we've been doing for the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we're working on this. Thank you, Steve, for the thank you. Let's see. David says, CPAC now. I am really excited. Maybe the silver lining in this week is that we've got no excuse to not pass meaningful civilian accountability of police. And I know that lots of organizers who've been working around civilian police accountability are having conversations, talking with members of the Progressive Caucus, definitely. I know other aldermen, and I hope to have some more updates for you guys in the next couple of weeks. We need to act on this now. And I'll say, speaking for myself, I think this is going to be one of our top priorities. We have to change what we're doing. We can't continue this. And we've had really good community driven policies put forth between CPAC and GAPA. And now's the time to put our heads together, to take what we've learned, to use this opportunity and create the meaningful civilian community accountability that Chicagoans deserve. And I think that short of that, how else are people going to know that the city is serious? We've got people, especially a lot of our young people, they've seen too many of these uprisings, these egregious, abuses of power. We're paying out millions of dollars in, police misconduct cases. We spend a large amount of our budget on it, and nothing seems to change. And we've got to do something different. So hope to have some updates on that for you guys soon, but know that, myself, other aldermen, community groups, organizers, there were actions today. We're working on that. Question from Kelly about, has Lightfoot spoken about relocating the CPD budget? Kelly, are you talking about like maybe reallocating portions or the kind of divestment reinvestment piece? Kind of leave that question hanging. I think that's what you're speaking about. We have not had those conversations with Mayor Lightfoot. I will say several of my colleagues are having that conversation, and I know I've gotten lots of questions from you guys. Some of you in Facebook comments, and I'm sorry that I'm not always able to respond. But yes, I believe now is the time for us to look at reinvesting. Can we take 10% off of our police budget and put it towards the social services, the housing, the mental health and community needs that we need through COVID-19, through our budget challenges that many of us inherited, and through the police reforms, the consent decree. I think there's a real opportunity there, and that's definitely the conversation that I'm going to be pushing moving forward. And I hope to have a little bit, again, more info for you guys in the next week or so about a public education campaign that I'll probably need your help with. Let's see. A question about COVID-19 testing places for the community. So very exciting. Alderman Vasquez, Alderman Silverstein, and I are working with Swedish Covenant, with St. Francis Amita Health, with Howard Brown, and with Heartland Health to work over this next month to really ramp up testing in our area. So they've been fantastic community health partners, and we've looked at the numbers, and 60626, 60645, 60659, and 60625 are 4 zip codes in our wards that have seen some of the highest rates on the north side of COVID. And so we're working with them to develop both a kind of public education campaign and also set up some mobile testing sites in our zip codes. And we want to do this probably over about 4 weeks. And so we're working out details about which dates so that we can share that, push that out, and make sure we get as many people tested in our community as possible. Let's see. Question about people going into the water even with the beach is closed and no lifeguards. The lakefront is closed. Please stay out of the water. I will tell people, because I've gotten some questions about this too, that even with the drastic reduction in revenue that the Park District has seen because of all the cancellations of events, they are able to maintain their current staff, and we will have lifeguards this summer when the beaches are open. And so again, more details to come based on how our COVID numbers look and how that rolls out. Let's see. Thanks, Anthony. Volunteering in the community. So a lot of you have signed up or to volunteer, you are volunteering, or you are donating to our Rogers Park Community Response Team. I will put the link to the website in there in case you don't know about it. So this is a fantastic community effort. There are so many volunteers, people spending a lot of time doing this. We just brought on 2 folks who are going to be comms volunteers to help us talk more about what we're doing. And I'll say we do have volunteer needs. So big role is our hotline operator. So I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's been volunteering as a hotline operator from the beginning. If you're still doing it, if you did it for a while and you're not, thank you. This literally would not work without you. So this hotline has been an access point to people in English and in Spanish and other languages, to resources about unemployment benefits, to public health resources, and increasingly to resources and access to food. So our Rogers Park Community Response Team has put together this hotline. We've got volunteers who have donated time, money, and their delivery services to make sure people get groceries, get meds, especially some of our most vulnerable residents. And for the last month, folks have also been working with the Just Harvest, Howard Area Community Center as well to provide grocery delivery. So up to 200 families, households a week, they've been delivering weekly groceries to. So I know we need more hotline operators, and this is something that if you're worried about COVID, hotline operators, it's a role you can do from home. So if you're immunocompromised, a more vulnerable person, someone that's more concerned about this, you can be trained and you can help your neighbors from home, and we'll be happy to sign you up. So you can find the volunteer form on that website. And then I'll say another volunteer opportunity that we put out this week was for community cleanup. So for my block 49, we put it out in social media. It'll go out in the newsletter for the sign up. We've already had like 300 people sign up for this. So I know a lot of folks were concerned about maybe cleanup needs that would be necessary if we had, protests or riots, or if there were kind of burglaries or break-ins happening over the course of the protest. That hasn't been a big need at all, actually. So big thanks to our ward superintendent, Danny Murphy, and other neighbors who've been kind of doing cleanup. We're getting a little extra support as streets and sand workers have been asked to work overtime this week for kind of our general cleanup. However, we didn't get to do our spring clean and green. We've had a ton of rain. We need some regular maintenance. We need folks to mind those kind of traffic circles and the bump outs. And so you can sign up for the For My Block, and we're going to email you guys with a few just kind of autonomous cleanup days. We're just trying to get teams of people on the block who will commit to kind of doing a regular pickup and check in there. So those are a couple volunteer opportunities on that piece. Hey, Reverend Marilyn, thank you. Question about Chicago Board of Elections and what they're doing to get ready for November. That's a fantastic question. So I spoke with our executive for the Chicago Board of Elections a couple of weeks ago. They have been working nonstop. They've gotten sneeze guards, face shields, a bunch of equipment to secure things. They're working on recruiting more election judges. And so that'll be, once that opportunity is live, that's going to be something that I'll push out in a way that folks can help as well. And they are also working, because of the state fantastically passed laws that would help expand our access to mail-in ballots. They've got a whole plan for that too. So Chicago Board of Elections will be working a lot to promote mail-in voting or mail-in ballots, make sure people get their education there. So you should probably be seeing some things in the mail when that comes time, and have assured us that they've learned from what happened in March and are working on a big rollout of public safety improvements. They've been stocking up on a lot of the cleaning supplies. I'll say things like everybody gets their own pen, right? So that you don't have to reuse things. So I'm pretty excited about changes that they're making. And when they're ready to roll those out, I'll have something more to share. Let's see. Oh, Chicago Duke Dog, remind me of where I can go to donate. So that link for the rpcrt.org on the page, you can donate there. And so I'll say between the direct community donations, the many folks who paid for groceries for others, folks who donated to that Venmo, the re-grant that we got from Chicago United for Equity, we hit our $60,000 fundraising goal, which our goal was to have like $1 per resident. And some of the exciting things we've been doing with that, in addition to the grocery supplies, is also working with some of our community partners to do some our first week of hardship funds, where we've been able to provide one-time $500 payments to folks to help with rent and things of that sort. So it's a really small program. We just got started with it, but donations are going there too. As we're working through this next phase, the community response team will also be doing some strategic planning to kind of decide with the funds we have, how many weeks of operation we have left, and whether we should set some new fundraising goals in order to continue support. But we're trying to assess what things look like over the next couple of weeks. So thank you to everybody who's contributed time, money, and energy and thoughts. Question from Emily about the ward organizing or planning donation drives. Great question, Emily. And yes, so I know social media is not where everyone gets their information. I still do the weekly newsletters on Friday. And so this will go out this week. Maybe I can do a special email tomorrow. But Friday, and I'll say, let's see if I can post a link to it here to the page. I reached out to some of my colleagues, aldermen in some of the impacted wards on the southeast, south, and west side of the city to ask them about community organizations who were working on food and supply access. As many, especially kind of chain retail stores, were vandalized and, kind of temporarily closed, a lot of them. This was caused a big problem for residents in getting access to basic hygiene products, food. And so let's see if I can do a link to this post. We've got Alderman Pat Dow and Alderman David Moore, who put me in touch with a couple organizations. So I shared this on Facebook and Instagram today. I'll put it on Twitter as well. But so Teamwork Inglewood and Imagine Inglewood If are going to be collecting donations at Hope Manor 2 at 6002 South Halsted Street on Friday, June 5th, between 12 to 4 p.m. So that's Hope Manor 2 at 6002 South Halsted Street on Friday, June 5th, between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. So that's going to be an Inglewood location. And then Aclavus, which is a community organization in kind of Bronzeville, and they're at 5036 South State Street. That's 5036 South State Street, are also collecting donations Friday, June 5th from 12 to 8 p.m. Make sure you're home before curfew because that's a thing now. But between 12 to 8. So one of the big needs that they have are kind of non-perishable food, water, cleaning supplies, laundry supplies, dishwashing liquid, masks and gloves, but also bar soap, deodorant, paper towels, toilet paper, diapers, baby wipes, feminine hygiene products, dental hygiene products, because a lot of Walgreens, CVS's, and pharmacies of that sort were really targeted, and some of the community orgs that I talked to don't know when they'll reopen. So some of those things that we all take for granted and being able to have easy access to have been hard to come by. So if you are able to purchase those things, you want to donate them. They need people to deliver them to their location. So that's why I've got the locations there and the times. And so if you're able to, please do, please contribute. And I'm going to keep talking to different community orgs and different colleagues and try and share different organizational drives each week as long as people are doing them. So look out for those. Question about the ComEd contract renewal. What progress is being made in democratizing electricity provision and moving it to the city? I will just be blunt, not much. A lot has come up. I have not had an update on the contract renewal. Many of our city council committees are just meeting. This is really our second month of being able to meet virtually. I will look for some updates from Alderman Cardenas, from our committee on that issue, and try and get back to you. Hello, Gerardo. Let's see. David says there's been rumors about another round of housing grants. Are there details on that from DOH? I asked about that today. So Commissioner Navarra had been speaking about this a couple of weeks ago. I think they were waiting to see what kind of housing support was coming from the state. I do know that the state is providing a $20 million housing support funds for undocumented residents that ICIRR is kind of one of our lead organizations at administering. So I'll share details of that when I have it. And that's exciting. But in checking in with Budget Director Park and Commissioner Navarra today, I'm trying to follow up on what the city's doing for our emergency rental support. So details to come. Let's see. Oh, peaceful protesters marching down Sheridan. Harry's call for CPS to cancel the contract with police. Where do you stand on this? I stand in support of this. I don't think that we should have a CPS contract with police in our schools. Let's see. Link for RP cleanup volunteers. Yes, I'll share it in the comment box here. I work as fast as Google Drive will let me. Let's see. Thank you guys for pausing with me here. Here we go. There you go. So that link, if you want to sign up for the For My Block 49 cleanup cruise, you can do that there. Question about donating to the hardship fund. Go to the rpcrt.org website that I linked in here a little earlier. There's a space to donate. Northside Community Resources is our fiscal sponsor. They have been fantastic. Big shout out to Giselle Hennings, to Chris Sala, and the rest of the team in supporting the Rogers Park Community Response Team and our neighbors through so many things. Can't say enough about them, but you can make a donation there, and that's the pool of money that we use for everything. Let's see. Contact tracing jobs, another great question here. The idea of keeping contact tracing jobs in affected communities, should they go to the Department of Public Health or private groups like University of Chicago or Howard Brown? I don't have a specific opinion on who should be the employers. I do know that I think that the distributed model of finding a large partner and then getting local community-based organizations to do the hiring is a really effective one, both for speed, but also to make sure that community organizations are getting control over being able to identify the people who should get the jobs. I will say that the way that it's set up now, the jobs are supposed to be focused on community areas of high need. I have asked for that to be looked at, not just by community neighborhood areas, but by something like census tract, because while Rogers Park we're a fortunate ward in a lot of ways. We have grocery stores, we have resources, we've got small business communities that are vibrant. We are still majority low income neighborhood, and we definitely have parts of our ward and parts of Rogers Park where people could really use access to those jobs. Sometimes the way they cut the data, we end up kind of coming up in the middle. And sometimes that means we get left out of opportunity. So I've been pushing to make sure that our community area, or at least a portion of our community area, gets included as an area that should be kind of focused on for providing those contact tracing jobs and training. Yes, David, Brave Space Alliance is collecting donations. Let's see. Oh, is it okay to post here info on the Juneteenth virtual program set for next week? Yeah, please share info there. You guys are sharing some good info. I appreciate that. Question about any inkling about when the curfew is likely to end. I don't know, and that is very frustrating. I have not been given any inkling of when it might end. I know that the ACLU reached out to talk. Many of you may know that they're challenging the current language of the curfew and how it's been laid out. I am not a lawyer. I don't have a legal opinion on it. I do know that I've been working really hard over the last couple of days trying to express the frustrations that it's causing around us for people needing to get to work and a lot of those transportation cuts on CTA. I know today buses were all supposed to be running and trains were allowed to go downtown. And then I had lots of people reach out during their either morning commute home from their overnight job or their morning commute to work, letting me know that like the 147 had stopped and that some of the train stops that were open downtown, I don't think there were any initially that provided accessible options for people. So it was a lot of phone tag this morning that was amended. So I will say there are accessible train stops downtown, more options for people. I urge people to still check your CTA updates. Check those alerts in the websites as you're planning your commute, because I think we found out like the problem with the 147 bus was that they had to reroute because of some of the bridges still being up, even though some of them have put down. So it's complicated. It's really frustrating. I'm sorry that we're having to deal with it. I'll keep working on it and voicing our frustration there. Let's see, Harry, you talked about the letter we sent regarding the detention centers and the immigrant kids. What are the next steps and how can I help on that? I don't know what our next steps are. I'm open to, I'd say email us, Harry. I'm open to, what we can do there. I think we need to have some continuing conversations about what needs to change at the federal level. I've certainly asked, since our last round of the actions that folks had, I've talked to the folks at Heartland Home Care about what their evolving position is on this, especially given administrative issues. And we're just going to have to keep the conversation going. So send me some info. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are. I think it's something we're going to have to keep talking about. Questions about, I'm just going to wrap this up with these last couple questions, you guys, because I've spent way too much time on the video. Let's see, questions about if Greenview Glenwood will be getting the shared street treatment like Leland has. That's another fantastic question. You guys know that the mayor and CDOT announced this Our Streets initiative, looking at how we can have more shared streets. There's still not a ton of details. Like right now, that shared street option looks like allowing pedestrian and bicycle traffic, but also vehicular traffic. I will say that we did meet with CDOT to get more information about it. They've been evaluating some of our streets, and we're also looking at the Make Way for People program, which might be a more direct option for what people are looking for at providing more open space in the streets. So, currently we've been in talks with folks around Glenwood, like the 6900 block of Glenwood, also around Jarvis Square, and have been evaluating some streets off of Howard to see what would it look like to be able to maybe for a weekend or for short periods of time to close down those streets to vehicular traffic to allow public programming and more outdoor space. So we're talking to community members and business owners. I would encourage folks to continue to email ideas to the COVID mobility at chicago.gov email address, because CDOT's tracking it and keeping that info there. but you're also welcome to email our office at 49th Ward account with specific ideas. But know that we're kind of evaluating it and moving on that too. Let's see. Unused parking spaces. If there's some, so Sarah, I think Leslie already answered you. Yeah, if you can, Sarah, if you can email that office at 49thward.org account, if you know that there have been reserved disabled spots that are no longer in use, it's an administrative process to process with that person if they've moved and aren't using it. That's something we can handle at the office. Please email us with the exact address and we'll follow up with you. And an update on mail delivery. I do not have an update on mail delivery, Marilyn, but I'll follow up on that and get back to you. David, you're getting these last questions. All right, I'm cutting it off after Maureen's the last question, you guys. So Maureen's the last question in the feed. Everything else, please email me at the office at 49th Ward account. And I'm going to wrap up answering these last few. So I'll start with Maureen. Will the recording be posted? Oh yeah, absolutely. So what's cool about doing these on YouTube, I know that it's live, but these just stay, you can go to this YouTube live stream and check it out and you can rewatch this whenever you want. Please share it, whatever. You can take clips of it, I'm sure, and make funny, weird memes or GIFs of me. Go for it. And then working backwards. Programming for kids, keeping kids occupied this summer is going to be tough. Walter, I do know that there's going to be modified programming that the Park District is doing. So check out their website. We had something shared in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago about it. I'm sorry, I don't have all the details in my head, but please go to the Park District page and we'll try and share some more in the newsletter that goes out Friday about some of the modified programming that they're doing because we realize kids need something to do. Absolutely. And then David, can we propose an ordinance that provides free and accessible transportation options if the mayor ever shuts down CTA in the future? I don't know that changing the city code for it would be the answer. I do know that it's a problem. Happy to talk about, you like to talk about it with you. I think a better thing would be a policy practice. I don't know that an ordinance would be the way to do it because that would entail, like doing it in an ordinance would entail some kind of fund dedicated to it. And that might be tricky in changing the city code on that. But yeah, I think that when we shut it down that way, that was kind of the argument that I had is, is the city or CTA going to reimburse people for these Lyft or Uber rides that are at 3 times the rate? Because that's very unsustainable. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your questions. I will always say thank you for your patience and the opportunity to let me represent you. It's been a hell of a first year. I imagine the next 3 are going to be just as exciting. And as I said, I was on E3 radio earlier today. I really appreciate you all, even when things are frustrating and difficult. I feel very supported by our community. You guys are always challenging me. It's going to mean that all my hair is white by 2023. But I'm happy to do it. Happy to be here. And thank you guys. Do me a favor. And whatever information you learn, if you guys can do me a favor and just share it with other people. If you see people asking questions like on social or in your conversations, either direct them to these videos or answer questions as best you remember my answers here, or direct them to reach out to us at office@49thward.org. Last piece, because Natalia will not forgive me if I don't mention it. Some of you asked about how to sign up for the emergency text alerts, which we started this a while ago, and who knew that it would be so increasingly relevant. But I just put that link in there. It's bit.ly/textme49, capital T, capital M. You can sign up there. I do not use the text alert very frequently, and I promise I won't bug you in the middle of the night unless it's necessary. So thank you all. Have a fantastic evening and stay safe.